Lolohea, kia matolua si. I'm Johnson Raela. Welcome to the Pacific.
Noia Emodi, I'm Alice Lolohea. Great to have you join us. Here's what's coming up on the show.
The unheard voices of sex workers on the front line of Papua New Guinea's HIV crisis.
Part 2 of the ABC's investigation into the expanding Pacific drug trade. We explore the submarines cartels are using to transport narcotics across the ocean.
And the sounds of the boundary-pushing arts collective Famili. First though, Alice, there are allegations of bribery in Solomon Islands this week.
That's right, Johns. Prime Minister Jeremiah Manele's staff are being accused of trying to buy political allegiance. The allegations come as Mr Manele attempts to fend off a challenge to his leadership. RNZ Pacific says it has viewed screenshots of text messages allegedly sent by Manele's staff to some opposition MPs, offering cash payments of up to 50,000 Australian dollars to switch sides. The opposition coalition, made up of a number of Solomon Island political parties, say,
"We have text messages and recorded voice messages from government lobbyists offering huge money. Such conduct exposes a desperate government in clear decline, and one that has lost the confidence of the majority and is now resorting to unethical and reckless tactics to survive."
The coalition says they will provide evidence of the alleged bribery attempt to authorities for investigation. The opposition is currently locked in a battle with Manele's reigning party, Government of National Unity and Transformation, as they attempt to force the Prime Minister to face a vote of no confidence. Mr Manele told RNZ Pacific he will not respond to the bribery allegations. And Vanuatu says it will not be dictated to by Australia after reports revealed they've been working on a new pact with China. It was only last year, atop the smoking edge of Mount Yusur's crater, Vanuatu and Australian officials initiated the Nakamal Agreement, a landmark security and development pact between the two nations. 8 months later, as both governments work towards finalising the pact, a number of sources confirmed Vanuatu is in the midst of creating a new deal with China, known as the Namele Agreement. Speaking to Vanuatu's The Daily Post, Australian officials anonymously voiced their concerns the deal could affect agreements with Australia. While The Daily Post reports there has been no official confirmation from government on the nature of any agreement, Vanuatu Prime Minister Jotham Napat has dismissed the claims as grossly misguided and inaccurate.
Our foreign policy is guided by our national interests, not by external speculation or pressure. Vanuatu will decide what is good for Vanuatu. We will not be dictated to.
Mr Napat also insisted the proposed deal is a comprehensive development cooperation agreement and not a security pact. And Fiji's military is facing mounting questions after a high-profile drug pusher, Chone Vakarisi, died in their custody last week. Fiji police have begun investigations into his death, which they've now classified as murder. Convicted of drug possession and damaging police property, this was Chone Vakarisi, leaving the Silver High Court at the end of March this year. Now, Vakarisi is once again in the headlines after his mysterious death while in military custody. It was reported Vakarisi was in custody along with 3 others at a military base. In a statement, the Fiji military said Vakarisi, along with others, had voluntarily surrendered themselves for questioning. The statement says he had suffered a medical emergency during questioning and medical staff had administered exhaustive and life-saving efforts but were unsuccessful. They later issued a correction saying the medical emergency doesn't fully reflect the medical findings now available. A leaked death certificate, which was then verified by Fiji police, revealed Vakarisi had suffered a multitude of injuries inconsistent with the original Fiji military statement. The certificate said Vakarisi died of asphyxia caused by aspiration of gastric contents and had suffered severe head and chest injuries. Queenie Osborne, Vakarisi's ex-wife, spoke with Fiji's MyTV.
I was so sad. I was angry because to do that to someone, like to that extent, you know? And saying like he just couldn't breathe, like his lungs, everything was just collapsing. We just want those involved to be taken to court, you know, taken to task for what they did.
The NGO Coalition for Human Rights in Fiji is calling for an independent and transparent investigation into Vakarisi's death.
These incidents point to a deeply troubling pattern that risks normalising the use of military power outside clear legal boundaries, particularly in matters involving civilians. Those limits must be respected at all times.
Thank you, Alisi. Now, to unpack this further, I'm joined now by University of South Pacific researcher Jope Tarai, who's in Suva. Bula Vanaka, Jope.
Bula Vanaka, thank you for having me.
Now, first off, what's your reaction to hearing the news about the death of Jone Vakarisi in military custody?
I share the sentiments with certain sections of our society that it's quite concerning, given the context with which the person ended up passing on, especially in military custody. What this will mean for their civil liberties and just their basic freedoms. So it's been quite concerning in certain ways.
Now, the military initially put out a statement saying that he'd suffered a medical emergency, but then issued a correction after his death certificate was leaked, indicating he'd died of asphyxiation. What does this tell us about transparency and accountability in Fiji's military?
Despite the fact that there's been criticisms about the statements, it also shows that with public pressure and questions, and of course a more open and free media, the military in itself is having to adjust to accountability because it had to release a second statement. And so in terms of accountability, you can tell it's uncomfortable. It's trying to be more transparent. To what extent that will go will possibly be resolved or at least put in a better light if there's an independent investigation undertaken regarding this situation.
Now, the police is classifying this as a murder investigation. What does this reveal about the rule of law in Fiji?
We still have a long way to go, or still have a fair amount to go. It's going to be very, very critical how this is going to unfold, because there are various layers here of trust that will need to be held in place for a number of reasons, apart from, of course, the drug issue, the exercise or abuse of force and power, human rights issues, but also particularly for the current government, given that elections is around the corner.
Under Fiji's 2013 constitution, the military can intervene in internal security matters. In practice, how far does that authority extend?
Constitutionally, it is entitled to intervene in certain situations and has been given, or at least the language in the constitution, responsibility over security, defense, and even so-called well-being of Fiji and Fijians. So it's quite extensive constitutionally. In the past, of course, as we know, not only the allegations, but public record, even as far as the former Prime Minister's book has detailed the role of military officials and related military officials. So that in itself has demonstrated the excesses of the power and the supposed culture of impunity with which the military has sought to proclaim its role in civilian affairs, but has gone into very problematic situations similar to this. In recent years, the detainment of individuals, the politicians, civil society actors, for some, of course, is the allegations of torture and related issues around the human rights abuses of these individuals.
Let's stay on that in terms of well-documented human rights violation cases by the military. Do you think this latest incident undermines the progress Commander Kaluniwai has made in reforming the military?
Absolutely. It's sort of set back the efforts that the commander has sought to undertake, especially in terms of dealing with civilians in this regard, and especially for a situation related to the so-called drug issue. And so in that regard, it's going to take a lot for the military to continue on its path in demonstrating that it can be trusted to not abuse its power. And also to buy the legitimacy of the general public in acknowledging that this drug issue requires the trust of the public in order to address it. The more independent, the more transparent whatever investigation is going to be undertaken. And of course, bringing the media on side to demonstrate it will be better in order to build back that trust.
Jope Tarai, Vinaka for your time.
Naka.
This week, part 2 of an investigation by the ABC's Foreign Correspondent program tracks the drug trade pushing deep into the Pacific, from Tonga to the Solomon Islands.
Key stops along a growing drug superhighway stretching from South America to Australia, and to stay undetected, cartels are using narco subs.
Solomon Islands reporter Kristen Rita Almanu-Leong travelled with the team to come face to face with one that washed up on shore.
It arrived without warning, floating offshore of a small village in Malaita province.
Me come out from house, time sanya me rise, then me look him no signal blow light, osem glass. So me say, what now this one? Where signal osem? So time me look him one full object and float. Lo see, tell her osem with a flight for good. Ma what now? My boat na this one.
It's known as a narco sub. These vessels are designed to carry huge amounts of drugs across oceans while staying hidden from authorities. But more and more, they are appearing on our shores. For Pacific nations with vast coastlines and limited police resources, this abandoned sub is a sign of the growing narcotics trade moving through the region. Their design is stealthy, long and narrow. They are able to carry tons of cocaine, fuel and a small crew. When fully loaded, everything except the top is submerged, with a fiberglass cockpit just above the water's surface used for navigation, and the hull of the vessel painted to blend in with the ocean's waves, making it hard to detect. They cost around $1 million to make, a small price compared to the payoff. A single ton of cocaine delivered to Australia can generate up to $150 million. Globally, narco subs are becoming more and more appealing for traffickers, with massive drug exports coming out of the Americas. The scattered islands and under-patrolled waters of the Pacific are the perfect transit route to reach the lucrative markets of Australia and New Zealand. These narco subs can travel thousands of kilometers, refueling at sea or meeting up with other vessels to move drugs closer to their final destination. And abandoned vessels have been turning up all across the region, from remote atolls in Marshall Islands to French Polynesia.
Submarine blockade, drug dealers are in this one.
In the space of about 18 months, 4 narco subs have washed up in Solomon Islands, all with no cargo and no crew. Among them, the one in Malaita province that Robinson Fugui found near his village. Its empty hull, an unsettling reminder of what it means for their community and country.
So lesson blue mi fala mi fala osem. Ota new drugs where emi manufactured, emi cross-criminal war this all time. So each family, you must try for you perfect team or the beginning from this fella or the drugs, or the new drugs.
You can watch part 2 of the Foreign Correspondent investigation with Stephanie March in Solomon Islands and Tonga on the ABC News in-depth YouTube channel. Just search Narco Islands. In Papua New Guinea, HIV cases spiked in the late 1990s. By the early 2000s, it was the leading cause of death at Port Moresby General Hospital. Then last year, the government declared a national HIV emergency.
But beyond the numbers, we speak to women working in the sex trade about stigma, limited access to protection and treatment, and why they've been left out of the national response.
Reporter Belinda Cora looks at how years of neglect and underfunding have driven one of the region's most serious health crises.
Boroko Shopping Centre in Port Moresby is a hotspot for sex workers and men seeking their services.
The men that we go out with, they're risky and it does become dangerous, especially at night.
I've come here to meet Sylvia, not her real name. She spent more than a decade earning a living through sex work.
Yeah, plenty time.
A lot of the time, we are attacked and sometimes almost killed by these men.
But violence isn't the only risk these women face. PNG is today grappling with a surge in HIV cases.
There are men who are infected and hanging around here too, and some come just to harm and kill as well.
There's almost 200,000 female sex workers in PNG and almost 359,000 male clients.
I don't care if they're giving me a large sum of money for sex. If they refuse to use a condom, I refuse sex as well, because my life is also important and I am doing this to live.
In 2025, PNG declared a national HIV emergency with over 11,000 new infections. There's over 120,000 people living with HIV in the country, although that number is thought to be much higher.
Very good morning, John. How are you?
I'm well.
John West Tory started IGAD Hope in 2003 with some friends, 2 years after he was diagnosed with HIV.
PNG has the highest rate of HIV infections in the Pacific.
His organization provides support and services to people who have contracted the virus, including tracking down positive cases to make sure they receive treatment. But he says despite their efforts, it's an uphill battle.
We know that globally HIV infections have dropped. Not so here.
During the 1990s, HIV cases rose steeply in PNG. By the early 2000s, HIV became the leading cause of death at Port Moresby General Hospital. Increased testing and other public health measures saw cases steady in the 2010s. But in recent years, funding cuts and neglect have accelerated the epidemic. US aid was a major contributor. Those services have been nearly entirely shut down.
When the funding cuts came, then the increase in people living with HIV has gone up tremendously.
IGAD Hope Executive Director Melanie Palili says funding remains the critical barrier to expanding their work.
We have a lot of members who would love to go out and do the awareness activities, but we need money to support with logistics.
Yes. Melanie says when they do have enough funds for community outreach, they see huge demand, especially for condoms.
I think we went close to 200,000 condoms that were distributed. And surprisingly, most of those that came to get the condoms were pregnant women or mothers or females. Most of the women were spouses of men that were working remotely, or they know of their spouses having extramarital affairs. Like, those were the assumptions that we had. And I guess out of fear of them contracting HIV, they wanted to ensure they had the condoms on hand just to protect themselves.
Stigma around HIV also remains pervasive.
In the beginning, the stigma and the discrimination around people living were really bad. In the hospitals and the clinics, even the health workers were, they just don't want to, they don't want to see, they don't want to touch people living with HIV.
Someone who understands this more than most is Maura Elaripe. She was the first woman to publicly disclose her HIV status in Papua New Guinea. She's dedicated almost 3 decades to helping people with HIV and says it can be lonely.
I don't really have real friends. Like, I don't know who I call friend. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, so most of my friends have died, people whom I am so close to.
Diagnosed in 1997 while pregnant with her first child, she later lost her second child and husband.
So my 2 babies' grave. My first baby was 3 months old, and the second one was 9 months old.
She says back then there were no services in place for people living with HIV.
Stigma is real, and discrimination is real, and it's still happening.
So we need to address that within families and within communities. And that's what I see in a couple of families with HIV. They don't want to go near anything to do with HIV. So it's quite sad, but that's the reality. Okay.
This stigma is even stronger for Papua New Guinea's sex workers, especially those from the trans community. According to the WHO, HIV cases in PNG are significantly higher among female sex workers, men who have sex with men, and transgender people. Social taboos and stigma mean many of these people are driven underground, too afraid to seek help, and often silenced when they do.
When we also do sex work, it's always very hard. Sometimes they call us names, attack us. This is not a good time that we're going through. HIV is increasing in our country.
Trina, a transgender woman, is a sex worker here in Hohola. She's been working here for 20 years.
I started going into sex work just to survive.
She admits to having unprotected sex with clients despite the risks.
The next day, I'm already rushing to the clinic to get PrEP. I tell them I had unprotected sex with a client and I don't know him or trust him.
Trina says health services can also be discriminatory.
Sometimes they're not really friendly. Those that are sensitive, they treat us well. Others who aren't just ignore us, walk and look at you and giggle off to the side and just keep walking.
I believe the government is beginning to understand now that we must take responsibility by committing funds from our country to support these public health programs.
PNG Health Minister says the government is trying to plug the gaps left by the withdrawal of foreign aid. He's also calling on the public to do its part.
The increasing number of HIV in the country is due to the fact that people are not doing enough public health awarenesses, and people not knowing their status. There's a lot of unprotected sex going around in the country.
But when it comes to stigma, the health minister says great progress has been made.
I believe many of our people now have come out of this stigma. People now can walk freely to HIV clinic and get their bloods tested. It's no longer, I don't see a stigma as an issue anymore in our country.
Tessie Soy is a social worker and one of PNG's most well-known advocates for people with HIV. She disagrees.
The stigma and discrimination has not gone off. It is still here.
But more than anything, she's worried the epidemic is once again getting beyond the control of health authorities.
We're battling. We haven't got there. At one stage, some years ago, about maybe 15 years ago, I thought we were going somewhere. But in the last 10 years, all the posters, the billboards, they're not there anymore. And the numbers are increasing as we see the cases that come into our hospital.
Everyone we spoke to for this story has battled this crisis for years. They've lost friends and seen too many young lives cut short, all while carrying the burden of an epidemic that has never fully eased. But despite that, they say there is still a path forward, and that HIV in Papua New Guinea can still be brought under control.
I believe so. It can be stopped. Let's keep whoever is positive, let's look after them, but through our education, our awareness, our compassion, we can stop HIV.
Now for a bit of fun to wrap up the show. Famili are a boundary-pushing music and arts collective based in Melbourne.
Now, through the lens of the past, present and future, the group explores what it means to be Pacific Islanders, challenging notions of identity and belonging.
We went down to their packed-out show.
I want to make a musical project that's responding to themes of climate grief, identity, language, belonging, really exploring the possibilities of music making as part of the Pacific diaspora. I think a lot about music and art as a vessel. It can literally take people places, but it can also be a carrier of knowledge, culture, language, history.
It's a full spectrum term that can encompass all of the ways that we are in connection to one another. I think being Māori, being Pacifica on this continent is, I think, a different kind of experience because we're all away from home.
You're gonna be experiencing genre bending, ancient yet futuristic. You're gonna be hearing beautiful, soulful, resonant, soul-stirring vocals.
I really feel like this project, Famili, is like a family, with a lot of the members of the collective being like queer and trans. It's kind of this like chosen family kind of thing, and it's this real like union of like the peoples of Oceania. We've never directed a real like film thing before, but it started as an idea of like a teaser for the EP, and it kind of evolved into this very ambitious little short film idea. It's about acknowledging that we live in this like modern world where like colonialism has happened, and like we are, you know, we're trying to find our cultures again, we're trying to reconnect.
Lock us up, you made this ghetto, burn the land, flood the valley, creeks and meadows.
With everything that's going on in the world right now, it is taking a toll on everyone, you know what I mean? And we need these spaces to remind each other that, like, we will get through everything better together.
Run out to the side, yeah, we pull our head back. Dip it down low, yeah, we pull our head back. Camera through the fire, yeah, we pull our head back. Pull our head back.
Sounds so good. That's our show for another week. Remember, you can rewatch any of our stories on ABC News or ABC In-Depth YouTube channels.
Also, for more news from across the region, ABC Pacific Platforms is the place to go. Te abo.
Airera.